There is something I've noticed in practitioner-owned businesses that I don't think we talk about enough. We say we want help. We say we want a strong team. We say that we want other practitioners to become successful. And we say we want the business to stop depending on us for everything. But then someone starts becoming really capable and something changes. Maybe patients start requesting them. Maybe employees start going to them with questions instead of coming to you. Maybe they develop confidence. Maybe they start solving problems without asking permission. Maybe they're becoming really good at something that used to be your thing. And maybe this person that you worked so hard to train brings up a question you weren't expecting. What happens to my value if they don't need me anymore? Welcome to Behind the Healing Table, where we have the conversations I wish someone had with me earlier about business, leadership, burnout, and building a practice that supports your life instead of consuming it. Last week, we talked about what happens when your gift becomes your ceiling. When you've built a practice around your own capability to the point where everything depends on you. And eventually, if you want to move beyond that, you have to develop other people. This is kind of where we are right now in our practice. And I know that this sounds pretty straightforward. That is, until you actually have to do it. Because training someone isn't just showing them how to complete a task. Real development means giving someone enough knowledge, experience, mentorship, trust, and responsibility that eventually they may not need you to do it anymore. And I think that can be incredibly uncomfortable. So we need to talk about the fear underneath it. I want to be careful here. I'm not saying every practitioner who struggles to delegate secretly wants their team to fail, because that's not it. That's way too simplistic. There are legitimate reasons we protect certain responsibilities. Patient safety matters. Clinical competency matters. Standards matter. Experience matters. Licensure and scope matter. You should absolutely have appropriate oversight. But sometimes we're calling something a standards issue when there's also an identity issue underneath it. And I think we have to be willing to look at both, because there is a difference between this person isn't ready yet and I'm uncomfortable with this person no longer needing me. Which for me, I learned a lot about leadership, and this is where I struggled, is no longer being needed. And from the outside, they look very similar. Let's talk about the practitioner who knows everything, because I see this pattern where the owner becomes the keeper of all the knowledge. And this is gatekeeping. The team has to ask them how things work. The practitioner knows the history, knows what to say, knows how to handle the unusual situation. The practitioner knows where everything is. And every time someone asks a question, they answer it. I answer it. You answer it, which feels really helpful. But answering the question and teaching someone how to find the answer are not always the same thing. Eventually, the owner becomes frustrated. Why does everybody have to ask me everything? And sometimes I want to say, because we train them to. If every question comes to you and every problem gets solved by you and every difficult situation gets handed back to you, then your team learns something. Not necessarily consciously. They learn, when you're unsure, find the owner. That's not really independence. That's organized dependence. And we can even look at this in regards to our kids. Knowledge can become a form of control. This is where I think we have to be willing to get uncomfortable. Knowledge is power inside a business. If you're the only person who knows how everything works, you are incredibly important. Nobody can fully function without you. And that might feel terrible because you're exhausted. I know I am, but it can simultaneously feel safe because you're indispensable. And that's where the contradiction is. We can resent being needed while also deriving part of our identity from being needed. Let me know in the comments below, is this something you're experiencing or have experienced? Because both things can be true. And if we don't recognize that, we can unintentionally build businesses where nobody ever becomes quite capable enough to replace us. We teach them 80%, we keep 20%. We delegate the task, but not the authority. We tell them to make decisions, but second guess the decisions they make. We want initiative, but when they approach something differently, we step in. And eventually we conclude, see, nobody can do it like I can. Maybe, but did we actually let them learn? What if they become better than you? That's another uncomfortable question. What if the person you trained becomes better than you at something? Well, good. And I mean that. Good. That should be one of the goals. If I am building a team and I have to remain the best person at every single thing forever, I haven't built a very strong team. I want people around me who see things I don't see. I want people with strengths I don't have. I want someone to eventually say, Ava, there's a better way to do this. That's not disrespect, that's development. And I think this requires a shift in how we understand leadership. Leadership isn't, I need to prove why I'm above everyone. Leadership is, how do I create an environment where other people can become excellent? There is a patient for every practitioner. This is where one of my strongest beliefs comes into this conversation. There is a patient for every practitioner. And I genuinely believe that. I am not supposed to be the right practitioner for every single human being who walks through our doors, and neither are you. Someone may connect better with another practitioner. Someone may prefer their communication style. Someone may respond to their personality. And someone may need something that they are particularly good at. That does not mean you've lost. That's the whole point of building something bigger than yourself. If the only way I can feel successful is when everybody chooses me, then I haven't really built a practice. I've built a business around my own validation. That's different. And that can be a hard thing to admit. But what if I train them and they leave? This is another big fear that happens to appear. This is usually where the next fear appears. Okay, Ava, but what if I teach someone everything I know and then they leave? They might. And we need to be realistic about that. People change, careers change, families change, opportunities change. You cannot guarantee that somebody will stay with you forever. You can sure make it tempting though. But withholding development isn't a sustainable retention strategy. Because what's the alternative? Don't help them grow? Keep them dependent enough that leaving feels impossible? That doesn't sound right. That's not the kind of leadership that I want to practice. I would rather ask, how do we create an environment where people want to grow here? How do we communicate? How do we create opportunities? How do we build trust? How do we develop people? How do we create a culture people are proud to be a part of? You can't control whether someone eventually leaves. You can control the type of leader you'll become while they're with you. Your role has to evolve. There's another piece of this that matters. When someone else learns something you used to be responsible for, your value hasn't disappeared. Your role has evolved. If someone else can handle a task, maybe you can finally work on the problem nobody else has time to solve. And this is where we can start to think about buying your time back, right? Like Dan Martell. If another practitioner can take excellent care of patients, maybe you can mentor practitioners. If your team can operate the day-to-day systems, maybe you can build the next system. If people can make decisions without you, maybe you finally have enough space to think strategically about where you're going, about where your business is going. This is how leadership expands. You're not becoming less important. You're becoming important at a different level. But you have to be willing to release the old proof of your importance first. Let's talk about teaching what you know. So here's what I want you to look at this week. Ask yourself, what am I the only person who knows? Not because you're the only person legally or clinically allowed to do it. I'm talking about things that could genuinely be taught. What information lives exclusively inside your head? What processes? What communication? What history? What problem solving? What expectation? What decisions? Then ask, why haven't I transferred this knowledge? Maybe you haven't had time. Maybe you never created a process. Maybe you don't know how to train people. Those are solvable problems. But maybe there's something deeper. Maybe part of you likes knowing you're the person everybody has to come to. That's worth being curious about, because if your vision is bigger than you, eventually your knowledge has to become bigger than you too. You have to teach. You have to mentor. You have to document. You have to trust. You have to allow people to make mistakes within appropriate boundaries. And you have to allow other people to become really, really good, maybe even better than you, because that's not your replacement. That's your impact multiplying. And if you're building something that you hope will someday reach more people than you could ever personally treat, then developing other capable practitioners isn't something to fear. It's part of the responsibility of leadership. So you remember, there is a patient for every practitioner. So please like, subscribe if you found this helpful. And until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep building a practice that supports you as much as you support your patients.